Alrighty, so I got a video recently that was sent into my video request section of Discord, which is, you know, a place you can actually send me videos you want me to review on my channel. It's a thing you can do if you've ever had a thing that you wanted me to look at. But this is called Oxford Mathematician Destroys Atheism. I'm going to take a look at this because 15 minutes of brilliancy? I can handle 15 minutes of brilliancy, can't you? Go ahead and take a look at it. But first, let's get into the fan art section. This one is from XLR, and it's another coin. The last one, or the next one we have is from Cricket. It said, I was bored and was watching some streams. So here you go. I have some others, but I'll share them later because I do not want to spam. Cirrus with different body types. Oh. Queen or Princess Cirrus. Y'all have a lot of fun with this avatar design. Jesus Christ. The last one we have here is from Axo that has cream. New waifu just dropped. Yes, the void itself is now a waifu. And yes, there's things in the background. So, I've got Tiny Me. Why is there another one? And what looks to be a regular planet? Hole-chan? I mean, a regular black hole that's definitely not a waifu. And then, I don't know what this is back here. Is that a... What is that? I don't know what that is, but it terrifies me. Wait, that's the Space Colony Ark! That's the Space Colony Ark! Oh, okay. That is the Space Colony Ark from Sonic Adventure 2. Got it. And is that the Black Comet from Shadow the Hedgehog? I think that's the Black Comet from Shadow the Hedgehog. Huh. Well then. As always, everybody, thank you all for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. But, with that said, let's go ahead and get right into today's topic because we have some stuff to cover. Again, it's 15 minutes of brilliancy. You have 15 minutes, right? Please don't look at the runtime of the video. Please don't look at the runtime of the video. It's definitely over 15 minutes.
What I am amazed at is that serious thinkers today continue to ask us to choose between God and science. That's like asking people to choose between Henry Ford and engineering as an explanation of the motor car.
What you're about to listen to is absolutely exceptional. It's John Lennox with Oxford Union making his case for God. It's extremely dense. He packs a lot into a little amount of time. So feel free to pause, rewind, whatever you need to make sure that you're really grasping each and every idea that he lays out. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive in.
I believe in God. I believe...
So wait, are we doing a reaction to a reaction now? Is this just a reaction to a reaction? Oh no.
I believe in the supernatural God who created the heavens and the earth. I believe in a God who holds the heavens and the earth in existence. I believe that on the basis of rational evidence. And as we look at the rise of science in the 16th and 17th centuries, Alfred North Whitehead and many others commented that men became scientific because they expected law in nature, and they expected law in nature because they believed in a lawgiver.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do this bit by bit. If this is actually going to be as informationally dense as we're being told, then I'm going to go ahead and assume that I need to address every single one of these point by point as I normally would. So, the point that people go out and do science, basically. They go out and do science because they expect there to be laws in the universe. I don't know if that actually holds true. I think they just do it out of curiosity. And then they find that there are certain constants out in the universe, and then because we as human beings have the nomenclature of laws, we use the word law to describe those constants that we find. But, I guess we'll just keep on going.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not ashamed of being both a scientist and a Christian, because arguably Christianity gave me my subject. What I am amazed at is that serious thinkers today continue to ask us to choose between God and science. That's like asking people to choose between Henry Ford and engineering.
No, it's really not. See, here's the thing. By and large, there are a handful of people I know who will say that you cannot be both a scientist and also be a... Sounds a hell of a lot better than last time I tuned in. I had some time to sleep. There are people who will say that you have to choose between believing in a god and believing in the laws of the natural world or science or whatever descriptor you want to call it. There are people who will hold that position, and I understand that. And I think those people are silly too. But when you say that's like trying to choose between Henry Ford and engineering, I can do that. I actually can do that. I can choose between the entire field of engineering with the variety of minds that brought us those fields, and the dude who was a well-known United States Nazi who wrote a piece of paper, wrote a piece for people to read that was called The Problem with the American Jew. I can do that, actually. Like, I was going to begin with this as a flawed analogy, but no, actually, this is a perfect analogy. Sure, asking people to choose between God and science is exactly like choosing between engineering and Henry Ford. I can choose the science over God because at least the science isn't a person responsible for shitty opinions. Wait, Ivana says, wait, what? You didn't know about this? Hold on. Yeah, let's see here. Let's just real quick, you know, it's Henry Ford's anti-Semitic views echoed the fears and assumptions of many Americans in the late 19th and early 20th century. Anti-Semitism in America saw a change in expression and virulence when increased immigration from Europe brought millions of Jews to the United States. Let's see here. In 1918, Henry Ford purchased his hometown newspaper, the Dearborn Independent. A year and a half later, he began publishing a series of articles that claimed a vast Jewish conspiracy was infecting America. The series ran in the following 19 issues. Ford bound the articles in 4 volumes titled The International Jew and distributed 500,000 copies to his vast network of dealerships and subscribers. Yeah, you want me to choose between belief in God and science? That's easy. That's super easy. That's an easy one to do, especially with your analogy as bumfuck flawed as it is. Anywho.
As an explanation of the motor car.
So good.
When Newton discovered his law of gravity, he didn't say, I've got a law, I don't need God. No, he wrote the Principia Mathematica, arguably the greatest work in the whole history of science. Because he saw that God is not the same kind of explanation as a scientific explanation. God doesn't compete. Agency does not compete with mechanism and law.
Okay, so this is one I actually agree with. I actually agree with this one. So, by and large, there are a lot of Christians who will try to hide behind, but God did it as an explanation for various things. But most people who are rational thinkers understand that you don't have to have God done it as its own separate mechanic to believing in, you know, the mechanics of science. What a lot of Christian scientists will do, not Christian scientists where the Christianity is first, but scientists who just happen to be Christians, what a lot of them will do is they will use God done it and throw that in the bin somewhere and then go, okay, but how did he do it? How did that happen? And that's a reasonable way to go, because at least then, even if somebody doesn't come off of their belief in a deity, they're at least not gonna fall back into Dark Age thinking, right? That's a thing that we can actually do at that point.
Why is there something rather than nothing? Alan Sandage, the brilliant cosmologist who became a Christian...
Wait, hold on. Well, first of all, Axo, thank you for giving me your points for an oh. Secondly, why is there something as opposed to nothing? I don't know. I think the honest answer is neither do you, though.
In his 50s, said God is the answer to that question. But people are now so desperate to show that the universe created itself from nothing, which seems to me to be an immediate oxymoron. If I say X created Y...
Wait, no, wait. That's not what people actually do, though. The argument is that the universe itself didn't have a creation so much as it had a start of what we currently understand our universe's lifespan to be. The Big Bang is not a moment of creation, and I think most scientists do not believe that it's a moment of creation. That was a moment where matter that was always condensed, as far as we know, into a hot, dense state the size of a period on a paper, expanded. That's not creation so much as that is taking something that was already there and changing it. That's not an oxymoron. And I would assume you're smart enough to know that?
I'm assuming the existence of X to explain the existence of Y. If I say X created X, I'm assuming the existence of X to explain the existence of X, which simply shows that nonsense remains nonsense even if high-powered scientists utter it.
That might be worth rewinding in case you missed it the first time. That is such a good point.
Reminds me a little...
No, it's really not. It's a good point if you believe the straw man you're attacking is a good target. It's a good point then. But that's the thing with straw men, is that you have to actually create a straw man first, and the straw man here is the universe creating itself. I don't know many atheists who actually believe that at all.
A little bit of G.K. Chesterton, who said, "It is absurd to complain that it is unthinkable for an unthinkable God to make everything out of nothing, and then to pretend that it is more thinkable that nothing should turn itself into everything. The heavens declare the glory of God," says the ancient psalm. And we've unraveled a bit of that, seeing the fine-tuning of the fundamental forces of nature. It's something that's so striking to scientists that it demands explanation. And it seems to me that Arno Penzias hit it right. He is the Nobel Prize winner who discovered the microwave background on which a lot of the evidence for the Big Bang is based. He said astronomy leads us to a unique event, a universe which was created out of nothing, one with the very delicate balance needed to provide exactly the right conditions required to permit life, and one which...
Okay, so this is a lovely quote, and I've heard it a billion times from every single creationist outlet that I've ever been a part of dealing with on this channel. And again, that's not necessarily what we're dealing with here, but I do want to go ahead and point out the problem with this quote. We do not have a universe with the exact prerequisites for life. We have a universe with the exact prerequisites for empty space. If you look at the vastness of the universe, if you look at everywhere out in the cosmos, you can't really look into the cosmos. We don't really have the ability to see past our universe as far as I know. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. Correct me in the comments below. Correct me in the comments if I am wrong on that one. But what we find when we look out there is a shockingly small amount of planets in what you would call the Goldilocks zone. The Goldilocks zone is the tiny bit of space in any solar system where life, as we understand it, can possibly inhabit. Now, this doesn't mean that life actually exists in any planet that's in the Goldilocks zone, and this doesn't mean that life as we understand it must necessarily exist there. It also doesn't mean that sentience or sapience necessarily exists there, because there are a lot of other prerequisites besides just being in the Goldilocks zone. You need a massive amount of time. You need abiogenesis to basically have a chance to occur. You need a shit ton of things, which we were trying to figure out with the Miller and Urey experiments. We have a ton of things that we have to actually have still happen before life can happen. Even if you're on a planet in the Goldilocks zone with all the prerequisites there, it doesn't mean those cosmic dice are necessarily going to roll the way they need to. Now, it did for us, which is why we can even sit here and contemplate this conversation in the first place. The issue is not, can the universe come about because of a god? The issue is, must it have? And I don't think it must have. So, when you argue that the universe itself has the unique prerequisites to facilitate life, if you look at the rest of the universe outside of where we stand right now, uniquely, in our own perspective, you find that most of the universe is basically what we would consider dead. It's what we would consider dead. There's nothing out there, as far as we can tell, as far as we've been able to scope out. Now, we've been able to find little traces of things like water and stuff that is frozen on other planets, but again, in terms of life, how we would understand it, that's not a thing we really find that much. Sakura says, it seems that abiogenesis occurs far more easily than complex multicellular life, at least based on sample size Earth. Well, yeah, abiogenesis, all that does is get you, like, basic amino acids and shit. It doesn't give you everything. It's one of the many series of events that must happen, as far as we know, to be here. Ivana says 70% of our water is undrinkable. True, but it's also a habitat for other living forms. Humans have this really nasty habit of, when we think of life on other planets, we think of other us's. We think of other beings with sapience. There may be beings that have sapience on other planets. We just simply don't know. What we do know, though, is that as far as we can tell, in and around us, we don't have any other living beings except the stuff that we're able to catalog on our own planet, with a couple of degrees for, you know, tiny microbiological life that we can't really measure yet. Also, Small Corvid, thank you for resubscribing. And when I'm saying we can't measure, I'm not saying we don't have the instruments. I mean, like, it's not very easy for us to throw a person on Pluto and start measuring rocks. But we have this terrible habit of looking out into the cosmos and using ourselves as a reference point. Well, we exist here. This universe must have been created basically for us. Because look at all the things that had to line up for us to be here. But that probability doesn't matter. It really doesn't. If I take a deck of playing cards and I shuffle it up and I give you a hand out of it, the probability of you getting the exact hand you got is somewhere between the thousands and the millions. Hands in a regular 52 deck of cards are very hard to find. They are very hard to find perfect hands in any deck of cards you find. That probability is only changed when somebody's stacking the deck, usually. But regardless of the probability of any one hand being drawn, you still draw the hand. The hand that you have in your hand is still a hand you've drawn. Yes, the probability of you drawing that hand was incredibly small, but you have it. Which means that unlikely things happen all the time. Ask yourself this, if you want to figure out, you know, based on probability and prerequisites and all this stuff, what was the probability and prerequisites for just the last 3 generations of your family to beget you? Now, you may think that, like, oh, well, I don't know what that is. Well, think about this. Ask how your parents met. Did they meet in high school? Did they have a bunch of chances to meet in high school? Did they meet at work? Did they meet at the gym? Did they meet somewhere random as a once-in-a-lifetime encounter that they happened to capitalize on? Now, did that happen with your grandparents too? Oh, but not just your grandparents. You see, for your parents, you have 2 sets of grandparents, usually. So now you need not 1, but 2 more chance encounters. And for their parents, you need not 2, but 4 chance encounters. What's the likelihood of those chance encounters? Fuck if I know, but multiply it by 2 and then multiply it by 4. Basically multiply whatever back-asswards number you come up with, multiply that by 8, and you've got a very, very, very awkward and unwieldy number in terms of probability. It's very, very difficult to conceptualize how easy it would have been for you not to get here. But I can muddle the mixture even more. How many sperm do you think actually shoot out of any one person whenever they ejaculate? Trust me, I'm going somewhere. How many sperm shoot out? It's a lot, right? It's a big number. Go ahead. Wow, this is where if I were a different channel, I would just be like, tell me your sperm count below. We're not doing that, though. It's a lot, right? Well, only one of those sperm actually make it to an egg and fertilize it, typically, you know, outside of situations like twins. So, at the very least, you were 1 in, what, 3 million? 300 million? Depending on the sperm count. You were 1 in several million chances of being a different person. But, you know, we can muddy that up even more. How many eggs does a person have in their body? When a person is capable of bearing children, how many eggs do they have? And remember that only one of them is ready to be fertilized at any given point. What was the likelihood of you getting conceptualized in a different month than the one you were born in? What was that likelihood? You don't know. But, just for shits and giggles, we can take that 1 in, let's just say 3 million, and we can cut that down by at least 12 for every month in a year. Let's just say that there was only that single year that your mom was gonna have kids, just that single year. So, you know, if they didn't conceptualize you in January, then I guess there's 11 more months to try. This is a fun and insane set of probabilities, right? Because now it is 12 times less likely than a 1 in 3 million chance, and we still have to multiply that by 8 for every generation. And that's just, you know, that's just the last 3. The chances of you coming out like you, as you, ignoring all of your personal experiences that have made you the type of person you are today, the likelihood of that happening is so vanishingly small, and yet, here you stand. The likelihood of any hand you can draw from a deck of cards is vanishingly small, and yet, you have the hand. So when I hear this, the universe is uniquely made to support life, and the probability was really low, but we're here, and that means... No. That doesn't mean a god happened, that just means unlikely events happened. Unlikely events, again, happen all the time. Also, Sakura, thank you for the 100 bits. And, Kazaskady, thank you for the subscription as well. That starts us on the hype train.
Which has an underlying, one might say, supernatural plan. But I want to come to what I...
Okay, but why might one say a supernatural plan? Why does a supernatural plan have to be what we come to?
Think is one of the fundamental arguments for theism. I take it this house believes in reason. That's why we're all here. And as a scientist, I believe that the universe is rationally intelligible. That is something that has struck some of the geniuses of science as demanding an explanation.
You're right. It does demand an explanation. I don't think God is that explanation. Randtheful, thank you for redeeming your points for an... You fucking degen.
Einstein said the only incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it's comprehensible. And Wigner talked about the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. How is it that a mathematician thinking in her head in here can come up with equations that seem to fit the universe out there? Well,
is it possible that it's because the mathematician exists within that universe, and the only math they've ever worked on is the math that was taught to them in that universe? Is it possible that the reason that things work logistically in your head is because your head exists in the universe that you're thinking in?
How is it indeed? Because the irony of the atheist position here is evident. My atheist friends, and I have many of them, tell me that the driving force of evolution, which eventually produced our human cognitive faculties, reason included, was not primarily concerned with truth at all, but with survival.
Right. This is why we have Type 1 and Type 2 thinking. Type 1 is your survival thinking. That is the thinking that happens immediately when you hear the rustling in a bush and you think, oh my god, it's some massive predator, and so you think you need to run. Type 2 thinking is realizing, oh, wait a minute, that's the bush in front of my house. That's a cat. That's probably just a cat. Never mind. Your Type 2 thinking is your logical brain. It's the part that starts thinking after your irrational survivalist brain has started throwing out whatever scenario it can to protect you. when we're kids and we are more creative and less bound down by the terribleness that is the reality of the world, our type 1 brain brings up all kinds of things that scare us when you see things in the dark. Your anxiety brain goes burr way more often. And then, as you become older, you start realizing there are rational explanations for things, and you start realizing there are not only a rational explanation for things, but there are rational explanations that are more likely. You start being able to discern likelihood. I can go outside today and get hit by a car, but I can also go outside today and be hit by a meteor. One of these is more likely than the other, and I have some control over at least one of them. These are things that you start to learn over time, and it's your type 2 brain, your logical faculties taking over. But anyway.
And we all know, ladies and gentlemen, what has often happened and still happens to truth when individuals or commercial enterprises or nations feel themselves threatened and struggle for survival. The leading philosopher Alvin Plantinga of Notre Dame says if atheists are right that we are the product of mindless, unguided natural processes, then they have given us strong reason to doubt the reliability of human cognitive faculties, and therefore inevitably to doubt the validity of any belief that they produce, including their atheism.
Right. Which also means we can doubt any belief at all, including your theism. That's what that does. If we're going to do this, oh, well, how can you know what you know? Then how can you know that you believe in a god? Not even how can you know that gods exist, but how can you know that your belief is legitimate? How can you know that that's a thing? It's okay to have doubt. It's okay to exercise doubt. Doubt is a healthy thing for your brain to have because it prevents you from being led down by snake oil salesmen. When somebody tells you a thing and you doubt it, you start trying to figure out why you doubt it. And then you start trying to figure out why they were trying to tell you about the thing they were telling you. Why they are trying to sell you on a particular brand of snake oil. Said everything could be from the devil. Bible could be Satan's diary. Dark Knight says, Sirs, were you in any way religious? Yes. For 18 years, I was a Southern Baptist Christian. Now, granted, I was technically non-denomination, but let's be honest, non-denomination is just baptism light. And the school that taught me was funded by the old IFB. So, yeah. Clueless Expert, thank you for giving me your points for an owl. But, anywho.
Their biology and their belief in naturalism would therefore appear to be at war with each other in a conflict that has nothing at all to do with God.
How? And why is this dipshit just sitting there nodding his head like, yes, those atheists are stupid? What? Also, Dr. Apple Pie, thank you for giving out 2 Tier 1 subs.
Yet my atheist friends still insist that it is rational for them to believe that the evolution of human reason was not directed for the purpose of discovering truth. And yet, it is irrational for me to believe...
I love that little in the background. Like, yes, this is giving me ammo against the Redditors. It is... So here's the thing. Our cognitive functions, our sentience into sapience, that movement that the human brain made, it did not need to be for the purpose of producing reason for some humans to start deducing reason. When there are 5 people in a group and one person realizes that, oh, when I say a particular set of words, the people in the group do a particular action. Does anybody remember that scene from History of the World? How music was created? Where a caveman slams a rock onto a person's foot, likes the sound that comes out of their mouth, and so a choir is made where they just take a whole bunch of rocks and slam it on people's feet to make them sing different notes. It's a giant joke, but it's really no different. It's really no different. Even base animals that only have mostly work off of type 1 instinctual thinking can still discern that, oh, when I peck this button, seeds come out. It's how we developed the concept of a Skinner box. Nobody would argue that, oh, well, you know, this bird here is capable of higher reasoning. They're capable of philosophizing like humans are. No, they're not going to argue that. But the mechanics are still there. Almost as if having cognizance gives you the chance to explore those mechanics of how thinking works. That's not a, yes, the atheists are wrong because thinking go burr. That's not a thing you get to do here. Speaking of thinking going burr, clueless expert, get out of my chat. Stop with your things. Your dumb things. You're dropping 50,001 channel points worth of things. I see that. I saw what you did. And yet here we are. Did you get what you wanted? Man the Fool says there's a cargo religion in native tribes because a cargo plane crashed there once. People on Project didn't think... Guess why cat girls exist? What? Rand, there was a sentence there about cargo cults that, like, it got eaten. That got eaten somewhere. Again, this is one of those things where I have to point out, this is not saying that theism is not necessarily true. This is also not me saying that theism could not be true. But when somebody says, look at the atheists, they're all unreasonable because of X, Y, and Z, because I can pull up a bunch of quotes from a bunch of people that I think are very smart. I do not like this. I do not like this. It's not some homophobic pastor going up and waxing lyrical about how the gays have to die, at the very least. So it's not that. Also, Bonbon, thank you so much for the raid. I'm so sorry about what we're covering right now. It's not, you know, the homophobic pastor waxing lyrical, at the very least, but it is the, look at the atheists, they're all irrational, let's laugh at them. In speech form. In speech form.
Believe that human reason was designed and created by God to enable us to understand and believe the truth. Curious logic. By contrast with that, biblical theism asserts that ultimate reality is personal and intelligent, and the reason science works, and this was the motivating force that drove...
It doesn't actually. It doesn't actually. So, when you start saying biblical theism as opposed to theism, Seffi says, and he's doing a British accent. Have you ever considered that he might be doing a British accent because he's British, Seffi? That... Did that one occur to you? Clueless Expert says, does God want us to understand the truth? I don't think that's what's in the Bible. I mean, the Bible does say God's not the author of confusion, but when you say biblical theism, you're now putting on the added weight of what's actually in the Bible, and there's nothing in the Bible that says that the universe is intelligible by science. Now, there is a section in the Bible that talks about science falsely so-called, which is a interesting translation error. I know there's a couple of people in my chat who have noted that before. But I don't think there's actually a passage in the Bible that comes to mind that actually says the universe is intelligible by science.
Of the great pioneers of science is that the universe out there and the human mind in here that does the science are ultimately the product of the same intelligent divine mind. Human beings are made, we are told, in God's image, and that means that science can be done.
What? How does that follow? How does it follow that humans were made in God's image and therefore science can be done? What? I'm not saying it's necessarily incorrect, but it feels like a non sequitur. That feels like the non sequiturist non sequitur. Okay.
That makes infinitely more sense to me as a scientist than atheism does. Now, let me come briefly to ethics. Ethical behavior, like rational behavior, of course, does not itself require religious belief. This is consistent with the fact that humans are created in God's image as rational moral persons. But just as I suggest that rationality cannot be explained without the existence of God, so I dare to suggest that the existence of morality cannot be explained either. As modern science sprang from Judeo-Christian sources, so did the concept of human equality.
Wait, did he just do the Judeo-Christian thing? Modern science came from Judeo-Christian sources? No, modern science is based off of older Greek philosophies. What? That's not... I'm sorry. Modern schooling was funded primarily by the church. Modern science, however, I don't think the argument outside of, like, funding would be that this came because of Christianity. And not, like, again, not the church funding it. Because, again, this is like saying that your government is good because it funded something that you like, even if it's corrupt. Like, that's... Your government can be lying about 1,000 things and still fund something that's good. That's just how the world works. So... this argument here that, oh, by the way, science doesn't exist without Christianity, I'm sorry, but one, I hold issue with the... I just hold issue with the term Judeo-Christian. I think it's a bullshit term that's used by bullshit people like Dennis Prager. Secondly, I don't think that science, as a set of principles, can be found in the Bible. It's not really in there. The scientific method is not in there. The way we do science is not in there. But yet you can claim that, oh no, without Christianity, science wouldn't be a thing. This could be any religion. Any dominant religion at all that could be the ones that fund most academia could make this claim in the world where they were the ones that became the dominant religion. Any of them.
Listen to atheist Jürgen Habermas, arguably one of Germany's leading intellectuals. He said that universalistic egalitarianism, from which sprang the ideals of freedom and a collective life and solidarity, the individual morality of conscience, human rights and democracy, is the direct legacy of the Judaic ethic of justice and the Christian ethic of love. This legacy, substantially unchanged...
Okay, so... let's go ahead and get another thing out of the way real quick. These principles exist in multiple religions. It just so happens that one religion, two technically, did a really good job of spreading themselves, in many ways by the sword, across various nations in Europe. So when they're like, aha, yes, our principles of love and justice, they came from our religion. Right, so does every other person's principle of love and justice if they happen to follow a religion. I guarantee you there is some version of love and justice that you can find from every other flavor of monotheist and every other polytheist, every other person. And then atheists, I guarantee you most of us have some variant of love and justice that we can argue that also doesn't come from the Bible. It doesn't have to be biblical. Nothing about it ever has to be biblical. So I wonder if he at any time actually uses math to make his point. No, he just happens to be a mathematician who is saying that God is real by one bringing up a whole bunch of quotes and then stringing them together the way that you would for a lot of papers, actually, honestly.
Changed. Has been the object of continual critical appropriation and reinterpretation. To this day, there's no alternative to it. Everything else is just idle, postmodern talk. And it seems to me he's hitting the core of something important.
Also, hold on. There's something else I forgot here. There's something else I forgot on there. And I just remembered. So, is it possible for theism to be false? However, the structure built around theistic belief to beget good moral values. Is it possible for human beings to have good morals built on lies? is that possible? Well, let me give you a scenario. Let's say that you're walking down the street and you see a person who looks very different to you. This is your first time seeing a black person in your life. But you've been told stories about them. And in those stories, you find out that black people, according to the stories that you've heard, are actually messengers from some far-off nation that must be respected, else your entire nation's society might fall apart. What have you. Now, ignoring the fact that the person you met on the street was born, you know, a couple houses down from you, that doesn't matter. This is your first time, and you only have that bit of information. The information you've been told is basically a lie. It doesn't represent the person that you're talking about. It might have had some measure of truth, you know, ages and ages and ages ago, but it certainly doesn't have any now. But because this is your predetermined schema for what a person who is black is, you are very, very polite to them, you're nice to them, you start to get to know them, and by the time you realize they're not actually messengers from a far-off land, they're actually, you know, John and Jane from down the street, it doesn't matter. You've already made friends, and you're already here. You're already having a pretty decent time with this person. Now, this is a moment where somebody has been fed a lie, or at the very least an untruth, but it has piloted them towards operating better, operating with more moral integrity towards people around them who they otherwise might have been xenophobic towards, as, you know, the course of human history has dictated. I would argue that it is very possible for Christianity to be both entirely false in terms of God belief, but also have some pretty good things to say about how to operate around your fellow humans. I'm okay with that concept. Humans get their morals from stories all the time. This is literally what a parable is supposed to be, what an Aesop is supposed to be. Arakemi, thank you for the posture check and the stretch. And Rosetta, thank you for redeeming your points for an Ada, you fucking degen. It is not evidence that a god exists that human beings can derive morals from story.
Because the value of a human being on which sits egalitarianism rests is based not on what the human being can do, but what she's made of, or how she's made in God's image. I never forget speaking on one of my many visits to Russia to a colleague in the Academy of Sciences. And he said, you know, John, we thought we could abolish God and retain a value for human beings. We found we couldn't. And we murdered millions of them. And Alexander Solzhenitsyn has said, if I'm asked, why is it that 60 million of my fellow countrymen were sacrificed?
I don't believe that you cannot have a society that is primarily atheist. Or at the very least, pluralistic. I don't believe that. That doesn't track with me.
Sacrificed. He said the answer is, we have forgotten God. Science.
And again, Dude Bro here is just sitting there nodding his head. Yes, absolutely. Without God, the government might do some things like kill people. No government that's theistic has ever done that before.
Science, of course, marvelous as it is limited. Even a Nobel Prize winner, by analyzing a cake, cannot tell why it was made. But Aunt Matilda, who made it, can tell you. She can reveal it to you. But if she doesn't reveal it to you, you'll never know. And that brings me to my next evidence. It's the same with the universe. We can analyze it magnificently. But ultimately, if it has a maker, and I believe it has, only he can tell us what it's all about. And he's done so.
Okay, so this is a common problem I see with a lot of people who struggle with, I guess, what we'd call like vast cosmic questions. One of the strangest questions to ask yourself is why. Now, when you need a why behind things like how the universe came to be, you are automatically assigning personhood. You are assigning personhood onto that why. Because if you ask a why internally, the person who's going to answer is you. If you ask a why externally, there needs to be some other agent that can answer that question. When you ask a why that is so external that it includes the entirety of the cosmos, you automatically assign, you beg the question of an agent at the end of that line that can answer that question. But this isn't necessarily always the case. So, as an example, let's say you go outside and you see rocks that are assigned in a perfect pattern. They're a perfect circle. They're just on the ground like that. And you ask the question why. Now, there's a couple of agents that could be involved here. Not all of them sentient. There could be a person who put them there. There could be a person who's decided to set them up there and then abandon this project. There could be a bird who set them here, or a variety of birds that set them here. There could be a couple of ants that picked them up and dropped them here because they got spooked by something, and they just happened to lay in a circle. Or it literally could have just been a very, very strong wind, and it just happened to lay the rocks in a circle. Now, each and every one of these has assumed an agent of some kind. But notice that the last one, that wind one, that agent has no agency. That thing, that wind, it doesn't have sentience or sapience. It can't answer questions. It just sits there. It just does the thing. When you ask, why does the wind blow, you're going to keep on finding that the answer is, well, because the temperature changed. Because the world is rotating at a particular speed. Because atmospheric pressure is operating a particular way. But you're never going to find in all of these whys an actual person. Of all of the agents involved in that wind picking up in the way that it did, you're not going to find a person answering that question. And that's fine. That's how nature works. But somehow, when we make that external question so external that it includes the entire cosmos, we assume that that agent must also look like us, think like us, be like us. I'm going to go ahead and call this what it is: human arrogance. It's human arrogance. The idea that we are made in God's image, while usually proposed in a way to try to talk about the fall of mankind in the Garden of Eden and the need for humans' humility, let's go ahead and call it what it really is. It's humanity's arrogance. The idea that we are not bits of stardust that just happen to develop our own sapience, but we are necessary pieces of a God that were begot from him and will return to him. It's humility hiding under the guise of arrogance. Ewan Broadbull, thank you for giving your points for an owl.
The powerful narrative of the Bible, in particular in its analysis of the problem with humanity, not simply in terms of behavioral breakdown between people, but a vertical breakdown of trust between us and the Creator. The unique solution to that problem is not simply in terms of human ethical development, although that's very important, but in terms of...
Wait, not arrogance hiding under the... Maybe I misspoke it. Arrogance hiding under the guise of humility. If I said it's humility hiding under the guise of arrogance, that was my brain filling in the blanks incorrectly.
Something far deeper altogether. The restoration of the fractured relationship with God through the salvation he has brought through Jesus Christ.
God, I love the fractured relationship with God that was part of God's plan that he made happen himself with his own machinations.
A radical relationship that empowers us to live ethically from God.
A relationship that is necessarily like my relationship with, any abandoned parental figure of any kind. It's only one way. Like this is another one that I do not hold to. When you say you have a relationship to God, it's very, very necessarily a different relationship than what you have with other people. If I have a relationship with somebody, whether it be familial or parental or loving or friendly, I can say something to that person, and then that person will say something back. If I don't contact that person for years, and I message them again, I might get a, hey, why are you contacting me? Like, there's a back and forth, right? But notably, when we're talking about the Christian God, there's no back and forth. There's just you pray and then you hope for the best and you get no communication. And it's like saying that my dad went out for milk years ago, but don't worry, I've got a loving and stable relationship with him if only he would reply to my texts. It's been 15 years.
And here we reach what for me is the chief evidence, not only for the existence, but the nature of God.
Okay, so this is where he finally brings in the big guns, right? This is where he finally brings in the one thing that we actually have to care about?
It is Jesus Christ. He it was who not only taught the golden rule, but embodied it, fed the hungry, healed the sick.
Wait, so your biggest evidence for the existence of God is another Bible story? Didn't you just say that you can't do the universe begot the universe because y cannot create y? X cannot create x. X and y have to be different variables? Jesus is God. God is Jesus. You just did the same thing. Your evidence for God can't be God. That's not how that works. That's not how any of that works. I'm sorry, but no, we're not going further now. If your biggest evidence for God is God, then I don't care anymore. Then I do not care anymore. You have done your best, and it came up lacking. Anyways, I guess this is where I gotta throw it back to you guys. Did you find anything he said convincing? Did anything I say made sense? I don't fucking know. Let me know in the comment section below, but I tried. I tried. We got to the end, and the evidence for God was God. I'm so tired. I bet you there's even Christians in my chat right now, or in my comment section on YouTube, who are going to be like, but none of that was evidence. But none of that was good. I could have done better. Jesus Christ. Literally! Anyway. As always, everyone. Insert end video tagline here. I guess.